it in certain parts of America has obviously resonated. So we should respect the process, and we should respect his opportunity to lead.
If he gets his 45% tariff on China, how are we going to go with that?
Well, look, obviously any moving away from free trade is something we should be deeply concerned about.
Just on that, though, it feels like this is something that is happening with a lot of momentum, or at least with growing momentum. Now, it's not just Trump. I mean, Hillary Clinton was talking protectionism too, within the Democrat Party, within the Republican Party.
Yeah, and look, and Bill Shorten's latched on to it.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, no, well, Pete, I think...
Within your own party, I have to say, as well, there are protectionist tendencies.
Well, look, you look at the results and you say, when have been the greatest living standards for ordinary people across the world? And the answer is in recent history, and one of the big reasons is because of free trade.
I agree, but Trumpism is that there are pockets of discontent about that, where people feel like it's not working for them.
Yeah, but the real question, I guess, is if you hadn't have had free trade in the preceding decades, what would have been the result? And certainly my strong view that economic growth would have been less, there'd be more unemployment, and people would be worse off.
But maybe it was something for that time, and now we need something in this time.
Well, no, I think it is very dangerous to move away from the critical principle of free trade. I think it is demonstrably of a good thing. And think about the number of people around the world who've been lifted out of poverty in recent decades. I mean, you know,
it's cold comfort, though, if you're living in a developed country and you're watching your living standards either stagnate or go down.
Well, indeed. And obviously there are industries that have been negatively affected, and it's appropriate, of course, to provide training opportunities in those industries. But, you know, one of the tasks of leadership is telling hard truths. And, you know, it's kind of easy to say, oh, gee, if it wasn't for this terrible free trade, we'd all have jobs and everything would be fine. Now, that happens to be completely untrue. And the task of leaders is to call a spade and to acknowledge that free trade is a good thing, demonstrably a good thing. And Bill Shorten, as he does on so many issues, this is one of them. We saw it with the China Free Trade Agreement. You know, we'll just latch on to whatever the latest populist trend is. I mean, he's latched on to, Donald Trump's rhetoric around trade in the last few days, and, it'll be something else next week.
Yeah, there's a dog whistle there. I don't disagree on that. Do you have any concerns, though, that a Donald Trump presidency might not honour the deal with the Obama administration around taking refugees?
Well, look, I'm very confident that the deal will proceed under President Trump as it will under President...
Not everyone's that confident.
Well, I don't know if you saw that former US Ambassador Berry's remarks earlier today, where he said he's confident that the deal will proceed. We certainly are very confident of that. We have a very deep relationship that's been forged in some of the most difficult situations.
But it's one thing for Democrats to be confident. What about Republicans?
Well, I think, as I say, the relationship between Australia and the United States is a very deep one. This is obviously an agreement that has been reached between our two nations, and certainly we are confident that it will proceed. And might I say, this is an agreement of great significance, because for all of the rhetoric that Labor says about refugee issues. I mean, the reality is, under Labor, there was a humanitarian crisis. There was more than 1,000 people who drowned at sea. And under us, there are no kids in detention in Australia. And under this deal, we will progressively see people resettled.
But even if the Trump presidency allows the deal, he has said, bring in extreme vetting. We know that extreme vetting will knock out a whole host of refugees as part of the deal. We've seen refugees knocked out because of vetting in other countries like Cambodia, where we thought deals had been done, but when the cases are looked at one by one, particularly under extreme vetting, you can imagine that what looks like a good deal in principle, in practice, isn't such a good deal and reduces the numbers.
Well, look, this is a very good deal, and of course every nation has a right to conduct its vetting process, and the US will do that. But we're very confident this deal will proceed under President Trump, and this is a solution to a massive mess created by Labor. And for everyone who's concerned about issues of offshore detention and concerned about humanitarian matters in this area, this is something that should be very strongly embraced, because, frankly, Kevin Rudd created the problem and Malcolm Turnbull's solving it.
How comfortable are you with splitting families with the proposed legislation that would mean that people that go to the US, for example, can never come back to Australia?
Well, look, obviously, in terms of the rule relating to returning to Australia, that's very important, because you obviously don't want people smugglers to be able to market the capacity to return to Australia in the future.
Can't they market that anyway? I've talked about this on air before. If I was sitting in Indonesia as one of the 14,000 that the Minister Dutton refers to, and I saw that, well, guess what? you end up in America, even if you can't get your way to Australia under this proposed legislation, I'd still think that wasn't a bad outcome. I mean, I'd be sitting there thinking US, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Tweedledum, Tweedledee, I'll take any of it.
Yeah, but this is a one-off deal. It doesn't apply to those people who are in Indonesia. It only applies to people who are already in detention centres. So for
that
those...
disclaimer is not going to be on the way that people smugglers
Well,
spend this, any more than the disclaimer about the legislation you're looking to change.
People smugglers are evil people who exploit vulnerable people, often leading to their death. And clearly people smugglers will do whatever they think is going to help their business model. What we will do is continue to secure the borders, as we've done very successfully over the last 2 years, and the increased naval presence will contribute to that. So this doesn't change anything about our border security, but it does allow us to deal with this very significant legacy problem that was created by Labor and that we're fixing.
Section 18C, there's a lot of people in the government ranks that want to see change there. We do have this committee process underway now. Do you want to see change?
Well, Peter, I think really important to understand that this is really two separate issues at once. They sometimes get conflated. Now, there's obviously processes around 18C. We saw the QUT students who were tied up in legal action for 2 or 3 years. That should never have happened. We see spurious claims made, like the one against Bill Leak and others that have been made. Now, clearly there's an issue with the process because spurious claims should not be allowed to proceed for years and years and tie people up in the legal process. So I certainly think that reform of the process issues to knock out unmeritorious claims is absolutely right.
Well, what about 18C?
Yeah, that's a different matter. That's a different matter.
You're not on board for 18C changing?
No, I'm not. I don't think that the case has been made that 18C, the actual section itself, is failing the Australian community.
As long as the process changes?
Yes, I think the process, there are clearly issues in relation to the process. But look, in my electorate, I have one of the most multicultural electorates, held by the coalition, and there are many people who feel very strongly about this issue. I noticed that CAS, the peak body representing Chinese Australian Social Services, came out with some strong comments last week in support of the existing 18C provisions. And I think there's a very, very high bar that those who are advocating change need to meet in order to justify that change. I mean, this law's been around since 1995. This isn't a new thing, certainly for mine, the government's position has consistently been not to change 18C.
Well, you say that, but then cabinet ministers like Josh Frydenberg talk about how they want to change Section 18C. We see others talking about it regularly. It feels I've heard Julian Leeser say something similar to yourself, but you seem like you're in the minority on that inside your own party.
Well, look, individuals can, comment as they see fit, but certainly the government's position on it is to have this inquiry and to look at this issue, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I certainly don't feel that the case has been made for change of the substantive section, and I certainly think that there are many people around Australia who feel the same way.
Let's talk about the banking inquiry before we run out of time.
Yeah.
You're heading it up. We did have those hearings. Where are they at now? When are you next hauling the Big Four CEOs in front of your committee?
Yeah, so we had those hearings in early October, as you recall. Just last week we've published a large volume of written material provided by the banks in relation to questions from the committee members.
Are you happy with the responses?
Look, I think generally they did generally address the questions. I think there was some that could have improved, but generally, I think perhaps best to wait for our committee report where we'll address some of those issues. But
you're the chair. I mean, what stands out to you as something that you're dissatisfied with at this point?
Sure, I think there are a number of issues. One of the things that's really come out of this process has been, certainly in my view, the lack of executive accountability. So we've had a situation where scores of people have been terminated in banks for various, again, often quite serious issues, but no senior executives have.
So it sort of ends with the termination of whoever that is?
Well, that appears to be right, yeah. And, in other industries, if something goes calamitously wrong here at Sky News, senior executives would pay the price. And frankly, that doesn't appear to have been the case in the banking sector. So I think there is certainly work to be done there. I think there is absolutely a need to improve consumer recompense through the banking tribunal.
Just on the first point, though, that's a really interesting one. So has that been part of their responses to those concerns, or is that where you see yourself going from here? In other words, is them trying to explain that part of what they've put in their written submissions, or is that a question you're left with as you read through them?
It was a combination of the public hearings and the responses to questions, but certainly a consistent theme, in my view, has been a lack of senior executive accountability. And banks, like any other industry, if consumers and customers are continually let down, senior executives should go. And that hasn't happened.
When you say senior executives, can we define this? Because, these are massive organisations, these banks. Are we talking about group executives?
Well, look, I think you've obviously got a range of different divisions in banks, but if a division of a bank is having ongoing problems and ongoing failures to meet the basic requirements of looking after their customers' needs, then, ultimately I think the buck should stop with that senior executive. And that generally hasn't occurred. And I think from a cultural perspective, it's very important that those senior executives are accountable, because ultimately they're the ones that drive the organisations.
What about we're almost out of time, but what about major change in these banks? They are so big that adage of them being too big to fail has now been thrown around a lot, particularly since the global financial crisis. We have people like former Liberal leader John Hewson openly discussing this idea of breaking the banks up and the divisions that they have. Is that something that you have any sympathy for?
Well, look, it's not something that's typically been done in Australia. The US, obviously, as you know, has done a bit of that over the years, particularly in the telco industry. Look, that's obviously a very major step to take. So I wouldn't want to sort of, get ahead of that debate. But I think there are things, when you look at competition, there isn't, for instance, really an ongoing competition review of the banking sector at present. The ACCC investigates breaches of competition laws, but certainly it would seem to me that the more we can intensify and focus on competition, the better, because the tougher competition is, the less likely it is that bad things will happen. And you see, we want to encourage a start-up sector in banking, and frankly, we have not seen a lot of start-ups in banking in certainly the last 10 years. We've seen some subsidiaries of foreign banks come into Australia, but in terms of a domestic industry to take on the big four, that's very, very small. And these are the sorts of things where sensible policy should focus. How do we improve competition? How do we improve regulation to make senior executives accountable when things go wrong? And a range of other issues. And how do we make sure that consumers can get recompense through a banking tribunal when they are wronged? These are all practical things. These are things that certainly the committee is considering, and they are things that can be acted upon. And that is infinitely better than some sort of 3 or 4 year legal Royal Commission that doesn't represent any consumer interest, any individual consumer, costs hundreds of millions of dollars, and just basically helps the superannuation of consumers.
A show trial. I don't disagree with you on that one. David Coleman, appreciate your time as always.
Thanks, Peter.
Cheers. We're going to take a quick break here on Newsday. When we come back, well, we'll have sport with Paul Gregg. The Socceroos, didn't they do badly drawing with Thailand?
Do you love the look of a freshly painted wall, ceiling or fence, but avoid painting because of those dreaded roller drips and splatters? Then what you really need is the all-new Renovator Paint Runner Pro. Just pour in your favourite paint, pop on the lid and roll the perfect coat. And you control how thick the paint is by how hard you press. So all you'll ever need is just one coat. Use any old broom handle to quickly paint an entire ceiling without a single drip or splatter. The secret behind this amazing new technology is in the Paint Runner Pro's innovative microfiber roller and patented distribution system that releases the paint in a perfect even flow, again with no dripping. Watch as the Paint Runner Pro rolls a perfect even coat over this delicate piece of wood.